Okay, guys. Poem I'm looking at today. It's Dulce et Decorum Est. It's a poem I remember doing in first year in school, in secondary school. So it's definitely a poem you'll come across. I'd say possibly for your junior cert or definitely your leaving cert before your leaving cert. Anyway, I think you'll probably have it in first or second year. Based on World War One. So going back to World War One that we looked at before Christmas. Dulce et Decorum Est, and it's written by a poet called Wilfred Owen. So to give you the background of it, it's Dulce et Decorum Est. It's Latin for what it really translates as it is sweet and fitting to die for your country. So a lot of the propaganda at the time in World War One would have been getting people to go and fight for their country. They would have put up a lot of posters saying that it was the right thing to do. It was a romantic thing in a way that you would fight against the foreign enemies for your country, and you would save the people and become a hero. What Wilfred Owen is trying to do in the whole poem is he wants to go against the whole romance and the whole heroic aspects of war. He writes this poem when he's shell shocked. He was in hospital suffering from shell shock, and an awful lot of people were suffering from shell shock at the time. So he is essentially a traumatized soldier by the whole thing, and what he wants to do is to warn people that that it isn't as romantic a thing. That war is an ugly, horrible thing, a grotesque thing. And you can hear in the poem as well, it's essentially like that. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to read the poem, and we'll go through it, then we'll discuss the different parts of it. Okay. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of the gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace upon the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes retching in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick as sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as cud, of vile, incurable sores or innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with some choice zest to children adrent for some desperate glory, to the old lie, Dulce et Decorum Est, pro patria mori. Okay, so it's a very powerful poem. If we go to the start of it here, what Wilfred Owen is doing here is he's talking about the soldiers. They're making their way back from the trenches. Okay, he describes them as bent double like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed. That's like the alliteration we had yesterday in one of the poems we're looking at. Knock-kneed. The two K's together. Knock-kneed. Coughing like hags. We cursed through sludge. So you can see the soldiers are in an awful bad way. They're bent over. They're like old hags coughing away, going through sludge. Drunk with fatigue. They're so tired. Some of them are lame. Some of them don't even have boots. And as they're walking along, the gas shells the Germans are firing at them are dropping behind them. Now, gas shells, this would have been gas that would have been used in some of World War One, they used chemical bombs. So they were sending this desperate, I think it's hydrochloric acid or hydrochlorine gas that was, it would kill a soldier. So this is what they're firing at them. Okay, so if we look at the second stanza in the poem, then okay. Now, looking at the poem here, it's in the present tense. The poet writes it in the present tense. He's creating a panic by putting in the present tense, using direct speech. So I'm going to go through it here. Gas, gas, quick boys, an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime, dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a screen sea, I see him choking. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, and drowning. Okay, so the Germans have fired the gas, and there's a huge, massive panic to get on these big gas masks so the soldiers can protect themselves. Okay, these are awkward. You can see that they're very awkward. They're clumsy. He calls them clumsy helmets. So you can imagine they're there and they're trying to put straps over it and tighten their faces. So you can see the panic. And you can see how awkward they are by using the word clumsy. It's a great image to use for that. But we know that one of the group. So most of the men get the masks on. However, there's one man who's not so lucky and he doesn't get it on in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling. Okay. So he wants us, the poet wants us to see the horror of this, okay? So and we do see the horror of this firsthand, through Wilfred Owen himself, by being actually there with Wilfred Owen and by using the present tense. Okay, so we know this man is in trouble. And we're inside an Owen's gas mask now, looking out through the lenses, okay? So dim through the misty panes and thick green light, okay? So this has nearly turned into a kind of a nightmare now. We're watching out this man and he's choking and coughing and smothering, and we're watching out through Owen's masks, okay? He uses a simile. He compares this to a green sea, as under a green sea. He also used a simile in the first paragraph where he said, like old beggars under sacks. He called the soldiers old beggars. This time he's saying that we're under a green sea. And he uses a metaphor here. I see him drowning. So the man isn't actually drowning. He's dying of gas poisoning. But Owen compares him to being under a green sea and drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. Okay, so he's going for him, and essentially Owen is helpless. He can't help the man. There's nothing he can do for him because he doesn't have a mask on. And it's too late really because the gases have gone in. He's inhaled the gases. So it's very much a nightmarish kind of a poem, but it's exactly what Owen wants because he wants to paint the horror of war and how cruel war is. Okay, so then we get on to the last paragraph. So here he's talking to, Owen is referring to the audience, the people who are watching it. Now, bear in mind, the people who would been reading this poem are the people who would be looking at the propaganda posters on the wall by the government saying, join the war, help England, save Britain, be a hero, okay? Travel the world, learn about all the different countries, have a sense of adventure, come back a hero. And he's trying to talk to this audience who are reading this and who are used to doing this. So he starts off with, if you too could pace behind the wagon we flung him in and watch the white eyes retching in his face. Okay, so he's looking at them. He's going into the horror again. We flung him into the wagon. So this soldier has now essentially become a dead body. Even though he's still alive, he's been thrown into the wagon. So he's describing him really as a body, as just a body that was thrown into a wagon. If you had seen this, okay, so he's talking this lifeless body. He describes him, his white eyes and his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. So he's comparing his face to the devil, this innocent soldier. But by comparing him to the devil, he's introducing a bit of evil to the whole thing. That the whole thing is very evil. The whole thing of war is evil and horrible. He uses the S size, sick of sin. He goes through some horrible imagery then, again, the blood coming up from his lungs, the violent sores and on his tongue. But he goes to the end. My friend, if you had seen this image, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest. So you would not tell with such joy and heroics to the children about some desperate glory. So you wouldn't be telling the children the old lie, which is a lie. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. So it's the old lie that it is sweet and fitting to die for your country. So if you'd seen these images that this poor man has gone through, you wouldn't be sitting with children on your knee telling them, go and fight for England and it's romantic and it's fitting to die for your country. If you were actually there and you saw how gruesome and how horrible this is, then you wouldn't feel such a thing. So that's why it's a very good poem. Now, what I'll do is I'll put a link up on the Seesaw as well. There's a guy who's gone through the whole thing, which is very interesting. It's a 16-minute video of all the techniques he uses. I just had a look at his video and copied some of them from here, but this guy goes into more detail again. So have a look at it if you get a chance. It's very good to see the different imageries that the poet uses and the different techniques. And possibly next week, what I'd like to do is write a poem on 1916. If we could all do a poem on 1916, possibly using it, we can go both ways. We can go from the heroic point of view, or we can also go from the negative point of view. And I'll talk more about that soon. Okay, guys, slán